Shalom, shalom. Auntie, cousin. That's why we great rising. Okay, y'all. Get this stuff straight. Good. Okay. All right, y'all. Uh-oh. Sorry. All right, beautiful people. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Okay. All right, y'all. Happy Friday. It is May the 21st, 2021, day 159 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 828. Y'all, we are reading 2nd Chronicles, chapter 30, 31, and 32. Then we're going to hop over to Fossilized Customs and pick up where we left off yesterday. So let us go ahead and do the Shema. Tiffany, Sawubona. Okay. The Shema is found in Deuteronomy 6. We start in verse 3. Hear, therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah, the God of our fathers, has promised us in the land that flows with milk and honey. Hear. Can I get everybody's attention? Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah, our God, He is one God. And you shall love Yahuwah your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart. And you shall teach them diligently unto your children. And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuwah our God for our good always, that He might preserve us alive as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before Yahuwah our God as He has commanded us. Peaceful greetings, Uncle Nathaniel. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and get started with the reading. We are in 2nd Chronicles, chapter 30 today. All right, y'all. Okay. Oh, King Hezekiah. We start with King Hezekiah. So yesterday, I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to go back and check, but in the comment section and in the description, in the description box of Facebook yesterday and the comment section of YouTube yesterday, I put that blurb that I did about King Hezekiah, about Isaiah chapter 9 and 6, that was referring to King Hezekiah and not a future Savior who was coming, right? Because Yahuwah said He's the Savior, right? Okay, so when you keep it in context, we'll see that it's referring to King Hezekiah. All right, so if you didn't get a chance to go back and read it, go read it. Got the little references and everything there. Okay, chapter 30, 2nd Chronicles. King Hezekiah now sent word to all of Israel and Judah, and he wrote letters of invitation to the people of Ephraim and Manasseh. He asked everyone to come to the temple of Yahuwah at Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover of Yahuwah, the God of Israel. The king, his officials, and all the community of Jerusalem decided to celebrate Passover a month later than usual. They were unable to celebrate it at the prescribed time because not enough priests could be purified by then, and the people had not yet assembled at Jerusalem. This plan for keeping the Passover seemed right to the king and all the people. So they sent a proclamation throughout all of Israel, from Beersheba in the south to Dan in the north, inviting everyone to come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover of Yahuwah, the God of Israel. The people had not been celebrating it in great numbers as required in the law. At the king's command, runners were sent throughout Israel and Judah. They carried letters that said, O people of Israel, return to Yahuwah, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, so that he will return to the few of us who have survived the conquest of the Assyrian kings. Do not be like your ancestors and relatives who abandoned Yahuwah, the God of their ancestors, and became an object of derision, as you yourselves can see. Do not be stubborn as they were, but submit yourselves to Yahuwah. Come to his temple, which he has set apart as holy forever. Worship Yahuwah your God, so that his fierce anger will turn away from you. For if you return to Yahuwah, your relatives and your children will be treated mercifully by their captors, and they will be able to return to this land. For Yahuwah your God is gracious and merciful. If you return to him, he will not continue to turn his face from you. The runners went from town to town throughout Ephraim and Manasseh, and as far as the territory of Zebulun. But most of the people just laughed at the runners and made fun of them. However, some people from Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and went to Jerusalem. At the same time, Yahuwah's hand was on the people in the land of Judah, giving them all one heart to obey the orders of the king and his officials who were following the word of Yahuwah. So a huge crowd assembled at Jerusalem in mid-spring to celebrate the festival of unleavened bread. They set to work and removed the pagan altars from Jerusalem. They took away all the incense altars and threw them into the Kidron Valley. On the 14th day of the second month, 1 month later than usual, the people slaughtered the Passover lamb. This shamed the priests and Levites, so they purified themselves and brought burnt offerings to the temple of Yahuwah. Then they took their places at the temple as prescribed in the law of Moses, the man of Yahuwah. The Levites brought the sacrificial blood to the priests, who then sprinkled it on the altar. Since many of the people had not purified themselves, the Levites had to slaughter the Passover lamb for them to set them apart for Yahuwah. Most of those who came from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun had not purified themselves, but King Hezekiah prayed for them, and they were allowed to eat the Passover meal anyway, even though this was contrary to the requirements of the law. For Hezekiah said, May Yahuwah, who is good, pardon those who decide to follow Yahuwah, the God of their ancestors, even though they are not properly cleansed for the ceremony. And Yahuwah listened to Hezekiah's prayer and healed the people. So the people of Israel, who were present in Jerusalem, joyously celebrated the festival of unleavened bread for 7 days. Each day, the Levites and the priests sang to Yahuwah, accompanied by loud instruments. Hezekiah encouraged all the Levites regarding the skill they displayed as they served Yahuwah. The celebration continued for 7 days. Peace offerings were sacrificed, and the people gave thanks to Yahuwah, the God of their ancestors. The entire assembly then decided to continue the festival another 7 days, so they celebrated joyfully for another week. King Hezekiah gave the people 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep and goats for offerings, and the officials donated 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep and goats. Meanwhile, many more priests purified themselves. The entire assembly of Judah rejoiced, including the priests, the Levites, all who came from the land of Israel, the foreigners who came to the festival, and all those who lived in Judah. There was great joy in the city, but Jerusalem had not seen a celebration like this one since the days of Solomon, King David's son. Then the priests and the Levites stood and blessed the people, and Yahuwah heard their prayer from his holy dwelling in heaven. 2 Chronicles chapter 31. When the festival ended, the Israelites who attended went to all the towns of Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh, and they smashed all the sacred pillars, cut down the Asherah poles, and removed the pagan shrines and altars. After this, the Israelites returned to their own towns and homes. Hezekiah then organized the priests and Levites into divisions to offer the burnt offerings and peace offerings, and to worship and give thanks and praise to Yahuwah at the gates of the temple. The king also made a personal contribution of animals for the daily morning and evening burnt offerings, the weekly Sabbath festivals, the monthly new moon festivals, the annual festivals, as prescribed in the law of Yahuwah. In addition, he required the people in Jerusalem to bring a portion of their goods to the priests and Levites so that they could devote themselves fully to the law of Yahuwah. When the people of Israel heard these requirements, they responded generously by bringing the first share of their grain, new wine, olive oil, honey, and all the produce of their fields. They bought a large quantity, a tithe of all they produced. The people who had moved to Judah from Israel and the people of Judah themselves bore in the tithes of their cattle, sheep, and goats, and the tithe of the things that they had dedicated to Yahuwah their God, and they piled them up in great heaps. Good morning, Uncle JB, Alicia, Yah, Josiah, Shalom. Notice how it's talking about the tithe here, right? Let me read this again at verse 5. When the people of Israel heard these requirements, they responded generously by bringing the first share of their grain, new wine, olive oil, honey, and all the produce of their fields. They bought a large quantity, a tithe of all they produced. The people who had moved to Judah from Israel and the people of Judah themselves brought in the tithes of their cattle, sheep, and goats, and the tithe of the things that had been dedicated to Yahuwah their God, and they piled them in great heaps. They began piling them up in late spring, and the heaps continued to grow until early autumn. When Hezekiah and his officials came and saw these huge piles, they thanked Yahuwah and his people Israel. Where did all this come from? Hezekiah asked the priests and Levites. And Azariah the high priest from the family of Zadok replied, since the people began bringing their gifts to Yahuwah's temple, we have had enough to eat and plenty to spare. Yahuwah has blessed his people, and all this is left over. Hezekiah ordered that the storerooms be prepared in the temple of Yahuwah. When this was done, the people faithfully brought all the gifts, tithes, and other items dedicated for use in the temple. Coniah, the Levite, was put in charge, assisted by his brother Shimei. The supervisors under them were Jahiel, Isaiah, Nahath, Hazael, Jeremiah, Josabad, Eliel, Ishmachiah, Mahath, and Benaiah. These appointments were made by King Hezekiah and Azariah, the chief official in the temple of Yahuwah. Corey, son of Imnah, the Levite, who was the gatekeeper at the east gate, was put in charge of distributing the voluntary offerings given to Yahuwah, the gifts and the things that had been dedicated to Yahuwah. His faithful assistants were Eden, Miniam, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shechaniah. They distributed the gifts among the families of the priests in their towns by their divisions, dividing the gifts fairly among old and young alike. Elijah, if you don't leave that child alone. I said, if you don't leave that child alone, y'all are real loud. I know you're trying to be low, but it's real loud. They distributed the gifts to all males 3 years old or older, regardless of their place in the genealogical records. The distribution went to all who would come to Yahuwah's temple to perform their daily duties according to their divisions. They distributed gifts to the priests who were listed by their families in the genealogical records, and to the Levites 20 years old or older who were listed according to their jobs and their divisions. Food allotments were also given to the families of all those listed in the genealogical records, including their little babies, wives, sons, and daughters, for they had all been faithful in purifying themselves. As for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, who were living in the open villages around the towns, men were appointed by name to distribute portions to every male among the priests and to all the Levites listed in the genealogical records. In this way, King Hezekiah handled the distribution throughout all Judah, doing what was pleasing and good in the sight of Yahuwah his God, and all that he did in the service of the temple of Yahuwah and in his efforts to follow Yahuwah's laws and commands. Hezekiah sought his God wholeheartedly. As a result, he was very successful. All right, y'all. Last chapter for the day, 2 Chronicles chapter 32. Assyria invades Judah. After Hezekiah had faithfully carried out this work, King Sennacherib of Assyria invaded Judah. He laid siege to the fortified towns, giving orders for his army to break through their walls. When Hezekiah realized that Sennacherib also intended to attack Jerusalem, he consulted with his officials and military advisors, and they decided to stop the flow of the springs outside the city. They organized a huge work crew to stop the flow of the springs, cutting off the brook that ran through the fields. For they said, "Why should the kings of Assyria come here and find plenty of water?" Then Hezekiah worked hard at repairing all the broken sections of the wall, erecting towers and constructing a second wall outside the first. He also reinforced the supporting terraces in the city of David and manufactured large numbers of weapons and shields. He appointed military officers over the people and assembled them before him in the square at the city gate. Then Hezekiah encouraged them by saying, "Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid or discouraged because the king of Assyria or his mighty army, for there is a power far greater on our side. He may have a great army, but they are merely men. We have Yahuwah our God to help us and to fight our battles for us." Hezekiah's words greatly encouraged the people. Sennacherib threatens Jerusalem. While King Sennacherib of Assyria was still besieging the town of Lachish, he sent his officers to Jerusalem with this message for Hezekiah and all the people in the city. This is what the king of Sennacherib of Assyria says. "What are you trusting in that makes you think you can survive my siege of Jerusalem?" Hezekiah has said, "Yahuwah our God will rescue us from the king of Assyria." Surely Hezekiah is misleading you, sentencing you to death by famine and thirst. Don't you realize that Hezekiah is the very person who destroyed all Yahuwah's shrines and altars? He commanded Judah and Jerusalem to worship only at the altar, at the temple, and to offer sacrifices on it alone. Surely you must realize what I and the other kings of Assyria before me have done to all the people of the earth. Were any of the gods of those nations able to rescue their people from my power, which of their gods was able to rescue its people from the destructive power of my predecessors? What makes you think your God can rescue you from me? Don't let Hezekiah deceive you. Don't let him fool you like this. I say it again, no God of any nation or kingdom has ever yet been able to rescue his people from me or my ancestors. How much less will your God rescue you from my power? Oh, he talking big junk, ain't he? And Sennacherib's officers further mocked Yahuwah and his servant Hezekiah, heaping insult upon insult. The king also sent letters scorning Yahuwah, the God of Israel. He wrote, "Just as the gods of all the other nations failed to rescue their people from my power, so the God of Hezekiah will also fail." The Assyrian officials who brought the letters shouted this in Hebrew to the people gathered on the walls of the city, trying to terrify them so that it would be easier to capture the city. These officials talked about the God of Jerusalem as though he were one of the pagan gods made by human hands. Then King Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah, son of Amos, cried out in prayer to Yahuwah, the God in heaven. And Yahuwah sent an angel who destroyed the Assyrian army with all its commanders and officers. So Sennacherib was forced to return home in disgrace to his own land. And when he entered the temple of his God, some of his own sons killed him there with the sword. That is how Yahuwah rescued Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem from King Sennacherib of Assyria and from all the others who threatened them. So there was peace throughout the land. From then on, King Hezekiah became highly respected among all the surrounding nations, and many gifts for Yahuwah arrived at Jerusalem with some valuable presents for King Hezekiah too. About that time, Hezekiah became deathly ill. He prayed to Yahuwah who healed him and gave him a miraculous sign. But Hezekiah did not respond appropriately to the kindness shown him, and he became proud. So Yahuwah's anger came against him and against Judah and Jerusalem. Then Hezekiah humbled himself and repented of his pride, as did the people of Jerusalem. So Yahuwah's anger did not fall on them during Hezekiah's lifetime. Hezekiah was very wealthy and honored. He built special treasury buildings for his silver, gold, precious stones, and spices, and for his shields and other valuable items. He also constructed many storehouses for his grain, new wine, and olive oil, and he made many stalls for his cattle and pens for his flocks of sheep and goats. He built many towns and acquired vast flocks of herds, for Yahuwah had given him great wealth. He blocked up the upper springs of Gihon and brought the water down through a tunnel to the west side of the city of David, and so he succeeded in everything he did. However, when ambassadors arrived from Babylon to ask about the remarkable events that had taken place in the land, Yahuwah withdrew from Hezekiah in order to test him to see what was really in his heart. We all know what happened with that, right? We know what Hezekiah did. The rest of the events in Hezekiah's reign and his acts of devotion are recorded in the vision of the prophet Isaiah, son of Amos, which is included in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. When Hezekiah died, he was buried in the upper area of the royal cemetery, and all Judah and Jerusalem honored him at his death, and his son Manasseh became the next king. And that is our reading for today. Now, we know that when these kings came and inquired of all this stuff, Hezekiah went through showing them everything, right? Showing them everything. Like, how do you give away these secrets, King Hezekiah? Right? Because he got the big head. Oh, we can pretty much do anything we want because the God of Israel is with us, right? Oh, man. When he saw Isaiah coming, he should have known something was wrong. Oh man, here come Isaiah. What I done did now, right? Isaiah got there. King, what are you doing? Who you got in here? Who on tour? Who on tour, King? It's a few kings from the surrounding nations. Why are you showing them all the stuff that Yahuwah has given? Like, he showed them every detail, right? So while they were there being given a tour of the kingdom, they were taking notes of everything. And we know that they came back and they ransacked everything, right? Yahuwah withdrew from King Hezekiah in order to see what was really in his heart, right? Hezekiah thought he was doing something good. Mom, shalom. All right, beautiful people. So let's hop on over. Uh-oh, let me plug this in. I already saw it. I'm glad I looked up before I did that. Plug this in. All right, beautiful people. So we paused on page 74 yesterday. Right in the middle, well, a little bit past the middle of the page. Let's see. We can probably go back up right to the middle point. Hold on, let's see. Let's go back up here to where it talks about the Satanists and the Wiccans. Closer to the top of the page. Okay, so the 12th line down. All right, y'all. Joanne, shalom, shalom. Okay. The Satanists and Wiccans know more about the concealed origins of Christian traditions than Christians do, and often laugh behind their backs. One said, the Nazarene Barbarian Church, the one in the hands of the barbarians, stole the tradition of the folk pagan people. What it could not absorb was turned into their own perverse fantasies. The errors that were absorbed from paganism are in plain sight. The reason people don't perceive them as witchcraft is because only those initiated in the occult know what they mean. Outsiders only see the exoteric meaning, a superficial crust making the real meaning. The initiated perceive the, the outsiders only see the exoteric, EXOTERIC. Okay. The outsiders only see the exoteric meaning, a superficial crust masking the real meaning. The initiated perceive the esoteric meaning. A deceiver, liar, interloper, schemer is in our midst and has planted his seeds, our teachings. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. That's Revelation 12 and 9. Mr. Exodus was very sincere, but was deceived and lacked knowledge. Teachers have said that it would not be a good idea to change the calendar to the correct year because it would just confuse the children. Who is the real kook? The one who ignores the truth and wallows in fantasy, or the one who exposes the illusions for what they really are? Inventing man-made methods of worshiping Yahuwah are not new. He has given several specific commands forbidding his people from worshiping in pagan designs or adding anything to his observances. During the exodus from Egypt, the children of Israel imitated the pagan Egyptians when they fabricated the apsis, or which is the golden calf. It had never been their intention to offend him, but they constructed an altar and were going to sacrifice to him on it on the following day. But they mixed the Egyptian custom they were accustomed to into worshiping him. This calf had a sun disk between its horns. It was also the time of the year in the spring when a calf or bull image was an important pagan item. The sun was in the constellation of Taurus the bull. If something is pagan and put into the background in camouflage, we should be very careful not to mix it in our worship of him. He doesn't change. Christianity is like a bride ignoring Yahuwah's preferences and doing her form. Oh, that's good. Look. Christianity is like a bride ignoring Yahuwah's preferences and doing the things her former husband liked. That's pretty good. We are the servants of the one we obey. Romans 6:16. Paul wrote to the Ephesians, people who had been previously pagans but converted to walk in the truth or Torah. He warned them in the following text, and these are the texts which I am responding to in obedience to warn you also. For of this you can be sure, no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a man as an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Yahuwah. I know it says Mashiach and Elohim, but we'll just say Yahuwah, right? No person, for this reason you can be sure, no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a man is an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Yahuwah. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of such things Yahuwah's wrath comes on those who are disobedient. Therefore, do not be partakers with them. For you were once in darkness, but now you are in light in Yahuwah. Live as children of the light, for the fruit of the light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases Yahuwah. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret. But everything exposed by light becomes visible. For it is light that makes everything visible. This is why it is said, wake up, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Yahuwah will shine on you. Be careful how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Ephesians 5, verses 5 through 16. We must prove all things to see if they are being done according to the word of Torah. Light is Torah and darkness is lawlessness. Ephesians 6 discusses the armor of Yahuwah. We must buckle on the belt of truth, Torah. We must be steadfast or possess the shield of Amunah, which is faithfulness. We must shod our feet, our walk in peace, which is another word for Torah. Peace is Torah. Put on the breastplate of righteousness, which is another word for Torah. Take the helmet of salvation, in parentheses, that's another word for Torah, and wield the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of Yahuwah, which is Torah, right? So we live by truth. The truth is what? The truth is your Torah, Father, your instructions. Everything that we do, we put on the helmet of salvation, which is truth, Yahuwah's Torah. The breastplate of righteousness. It will become a blessed plate, right? The breastplate of righteousness, which is what? The truth, Torah, right? The belt of truth, which is what? The Torah, Yahuwah's instructions. Our feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace, which is what? The Torah, Yahuwah's instruction. All that we do, we arm ourselves with truth, with Torah, with Yahuwah's words and his instructions, right? Okay. This enables us to stand on solid ground in the struggle against the lies sown by the rulers, powers, and spiritual forces of this darkened world. Lies, deceptions, and excuses are the storms and winds that blow against the house we have built, the skyscraper with missing rivets, or the one with rivets. Hold on, that skyscraper with missing rivets, or the one with rivets. Torah is not shifting sand. As it is written, so we walk in it. The wise man will build on it as a sure foundation. The flesh must be disciplined by practice and walking in the light of Torah, which is found in Hebrews 5, verse 14. This is so that when lawlessness approaches, we will be steadfast. What a rabbi teaches his students is Torah. So also our rabbi. A rabbi binds and loosens. If a student goes to ask, what does Torah teach about this? Any rabbi will answer according to his knowledge and his skills based on Torah. If Torah prohibits it, then the action is bound. If Torah permits it, then it is loosed. Without Torah, a minister, pastor, or teacher is blind. And when the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit. Yahuwah gave eyesight to us so we would not be blind. It says Yahusha, but Yahuwah is the creator of these bodies, right? So let's do this. Just for the sake of people not getting confused, it's Yahuwah. Yahuwah gave eyesight to us so we would not be blind. Paganism and false behavior defiles us. All right, here's where it says Yahusha, but that's so people don't get confused. Let's say this, cross out the end, Usha, and just put Yah, right? Yahuwah gave us the keys to the kingdom, the Torah written on our hearts. He left us the authority to bind and loose. We do not bind, forbid anything alone, but with the spirit of Yahuwah, we not serene around the world can bind and loose, and we have bound the items being exposed in this book. We expose them as a counterfeit worship. For this we will suffer, and though we come in peace, some will be killed for it. The merchants have too much to lose. We see the mass, and Christ's mass or Christmas is an operation that has been used for well over 1,000 years to take up collections of wealth. The Christmas tradition, as it is observed today, is about 4,000 years old. Only the name for it has changed. This assembling on Sunday was carried over into the Protestant assemblies. They inherited the collections, the indoor altar relic of the Marian Mass, Sunday steeples, the Roman calendar with all the former pagan festivals, dressed up in their bright and shiny clothing to disguise pagan folly. Jeremiah 16 and 19 describes this. But they left the statues, idols behind. They adopted the greatest idol image of former sun worship, the sign of the cross, which entered with Constantine in the Latin Vulgate translation of the Greek word staros into cross. The Latin language had the word staro, but Jerome used cross instead. Most Protestant divisions absorbed the sacramental dispensation of grace to a large degree. The weekly plundering of the flock cannot be justified in the writings at all. There is no ordinance requiring anyone to attend a weekly assembly, but Catholicism instituted a Sunday attendance ordinance, making it a mortal sin if anyone missed it. We are reminded not to forsake the assembling of ourselves, but this is speaking to the 3 annual appointed times: Passover, Sukkot, what is this? Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Shavuot, hold on, y'all. It's Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, and Sukkot. All right. This is speaking of the 3 annual appointed times: Passover, Shavuot, which is unleavened bread, and Sukkot, which is tabernacles. Not a weekly regulation. Even some of these are only binding on males 20 years old or older. Today we understand that the synagogues are places to study the Torah, prophets, and the writings, to educate people and proselytes as well. The word synagogue primarily means congregation, not building. Okay, so we'll read this. The Mashiach's true way is Torah. Judaism or Yehudism means the worship of Yah, but rabbinical Judaism adds the Talmud. Yehudism was Paul's former way. Many are shocked to learn that Yahusha refers to himself as a rabbi, but it is even more disturbing to realize that he is not a Christian. He never practiced, nor does he now, anything that Christianity practices. Christianity does nothing Yahuwah commanded us to obey, but they do everything he told us not to do. Yahusha is not a Catholic, Baptist, Pentecostal, Mormon, or Presbyterian, but he is a rabbi, the head of a sect of the Nazarene, Acts 24:5. Hold on. Okay, it says the fact that he is about to return and rule the earth. It's not he that's going to return. It's Yahuwah, right? Or the king that Yahuwah. How does Yahuwah, based on what we know and understand, is somebody in the current generation who Yahuwah will raise up, right? He doesn't, as far as we know, he doesn't bring anybody back from the grave to do that. It's always somebody in that current generation who has grown up with the people. That's what Yahuwah has done, right? The fact that Yahuwah is about to return and rule the earth is not a common message you hear, yet we are told to comfort one another with this knowledge as we see the day approaching. 1 Thessalonians 4:18. At Yahuwah's return, those who died awaiting him, whose names are written in a scroll of life, the one with the 7 seals, will be resurrected. We who are alive will be changed. It will be like the wink of an eyelid. 1 Corinthians 15:52. The rest will be caught by surprise. This will be when the elements will be burned. 2 Peter 2:3 and 7. You already realize that Santa Claus is not in the writings. But how did this character get mixed into the stew? A character which has many faces to many people. This enigmatic illusion inspires all ages. The ancient shamanic cave drawings, pagan Germanic deities, places of cold and heat alike, all have this faceless and nameless one in common since long before history was all have this faceless and nameless one in common since long before history was recorded, or at least the knowledge extends over the sight horizon of our knowledge about the past. Who he is was passed down to us from a story from the early Norsemen. That is only true of the English word, because other language groups have shared cultural memory or such a character as Santa Claus also. You only get the latest echo of what the character was, because the last major change in him happened within the last 70 years, one generation, or span of an average life. At adulthood, when it is realized that it is all fiction, most continue to lie to their children and the cycle continues. The whole objective of Nimrod worship and the character of Santa Claus, Moloch, was intended to divert our worship away from our Father Yahuwah. Santa Claus, Molech. Think about Santa and what y'all do with y'all children, letting them go sit on his lap. I ain't saying y'all, but the people that do. Christmas and Easter portray a fertility cycle and are really witchcraft camouflaged as the birth and resurrection events recorded in Scripture. When a person turns away from these things, other cultural pressures are brought into play, and the name Scrooge is often applied to them. If any of you guys ever moved away from some of these feasts that most of the world celebrates, it's like the pressure is put on you so bad, especially if you were all into it, right? And it's like the pressure of the outside world begins to weigh down on you. It's like it's a strong pull, and it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong when you pull away. Thank you, Tiffany. Shavuot, Feast of Weeks, Pentecost. Thank you. It makes you feel like you are the one doing something wrong when you are pulling away from the mass who was going off the cliff, right? Some people they can't handle the Scrooge name calling, right? And they join right back in. That happened a couple times with us as we moved away. It's like, oh, you want to celebrate Christmas? What you mean the baby can't have no Christmas? It's Christmas time, So all this, and then found myself, and it was like, oh. Then we bought a Christmas tree, and I'm like, this is so wrong. I feel so wrong. We shouldn't be doing this, but allowing what other people say is like, oh, and it's this time of the season, joyous occasion, So I'm just like, look here, listen, and it's like sometimes it was like, you know what? I wish we could just sleep through the holiday, right? Because it becomes so strong. People, oh, what are you doing, oh kids? Well, what did you get for Christmas and all this stuff? And so as the days approach, like you constantly have to teach your children truth so they're not taken by it and they don't feel like they're missing something. Because that's what happens a lot of times. All the commercials, like keep the TV completely off. All the commercials, they start preparing you right at Thanksgiving time. Start these Christmas commercials and stuff, and the kids will watch. It's like, oh, can we get this? Are we celebrating Christmas this year? Can we get this? And so you gotta prepare for this stuff way before it starts coming up, especially if you have a house full of children, right? We don't celebrate Christmas because this is this. We worship Yahuwah. You have to figure out a way to explain it to them in a way that they understand. But it's like you have to teach them the ways of righteousness, right? You can't just take something away from somebody and not give them anything, right? It's like sweeping the house clean and not filling it with good stuff, right? Because those that were lurking, that were there, that shouldn't be there, they're going to come back, find a place that's been swept empty, and they're going to take up residence again, right? So there's something I remember my uncle taught me a long time ago. He said, you can't just take something from somebody. You have to replace it with something. Clearly, the scriptures say that, but not in those words. But you have to remove the lies and you have to replace it with truth, right? But also in that, you have to also teach your children not to be materialistic as well. It's like all those different things. You just have to teach your children about life and how to be content, not that you're going without, because we do this all year. Like when you need something or even when you want something, we do this all year. We're not waiting to the end of the year to stock up on debt and be paying stuff back. And, we ain't got money to pay bills next month because this holiday. I'm so glad when we finally completely broke free of that. Clearly, you still got family members. Like, okay, that's me, but they pretty much know now, so they don't really like, hey, everybody doing happy holidays, So I'll happy holiday people back, But it's a strong pull, And some people go into depression and stuff. It's like, okay, you put this away, but you're not filling yourself with truth. That's why it's so hard. So that's what we had to understand and realize, and it's just a process that you have to go through, So, but everybody has their times. You say, bah, humbug. Okay. When a person turns away from these things, other cultural pressures are brought into play, and the name Scrooge is often applied to them. As you read this book, it is sweet to have your curiosity for the truth satisfied, but as you digest it, it turns your stomach sour, doesn't it? It's like when you hear the truth, like one of the ladies responding on a video yesterday, she said she said when she found out that worshiping JC was wrong, she said she was literally sick for 2 days, right? Because her affections had been misguided, and you're worshiping somebody you were never intended to worship when you're only supposed to worship Yahuwah. She said when she realized that, when Yahuwah showed her that, she was literally sick for 2 days. I was like, sis, I know what you mean. Like all of us, and that's what it's talking about. When you find out the truth, it literally turns your stomach sour because you really thought you were doing what was right. And it's horrifying to find out that all this time you've been putting your energy into, like, this is the way. No, not quite. You got a heart to do what's right, but let me show you what the real truth is. And when you found out that you in fact were wrong, and you were doing this all wrong, like committing complete blasphemy, doing the opposite of what Yahuwah commanded his people to do, it literally makes you sick to your stomach. Like, I was sick for days. Like, we talked about it, I was sick for days. And everybody who comes to that realization, they said they get sick, right? I'm just like, because it's shocking to us. Like, we thought we was doing what was right because we have a heart to do what's right. We would never purposely do what's wrong, right? So when we found out that was us, it makes us sick, and some of us cry and we weep like, Father, forgive us, and we're repenting for days. And then we pick up ourselves, put that away, take up the truth, and we begin walking in real truth, right? Yeah. Gotta get out of that herd mentality. All right. As you read this book, it is sweet to have your curiosity for the truth satisfied, but as you digest it, it turns your stomach sour, doesn't it? Read Revelation 10, verses 7 through 11. Most of mankind is worshiping Nimrod or Molech still, but they don't know it. Incredible effort is expended by everyone to conform to the adversary's hidden agendas, but they don't know it. The dragon deceives the whole world, and he is really good at what he has done, right? There is a war going on against the truth, and you're in it. The battle is fought in the hearts and minds of mankind. The vast majority believe that in the beginning there was nothing, then it exploded. Rain, withered rocks, and molecules in solution developed into the building blocks of life and eventually became biophysicists who believe they came from a rock. The second largest rock carving in the world, Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills of South Dakota, depicts the faces of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln, each about 18 meters high. If you ask one of the evolutionists if they think the universe could ever randomly create such a formation by itself over any period of time, they will logically admit it to be impossible. Yet they believe the universe could randomly create the actual men depicted on the rock. The adversary wants people to believe there is no designer, and this helps him because he can go about manipulating us because most of us don't believe he exists either. The memory of the true character of Santa Claus has been wiped out. We have plenty of other garbage midden from Babel, and it's held to with great fondness. Most people miss the obvious word, Sunday. All right, where we at? 48 minutes? Okay. All right, we'll read this next section. The Magi, or wise ones, or Babel's mystagogues. Magi, M-A-G-I, was a term used for the pagan priests of Mithras, and they were magicians who used fire and eagles as representations of their deity. Those who led the initiate into the mysteries were called mystagogues. Ancient pagans gave us the worship of fire, religious discs, halos or circles, wreaths, bowls, branches, domes with a oculus. Domes with an oculus in the top, bells, towers, steeples, candle altars in front of statues, holy water, wearing black, Indoor altars shaped like a flat autopsy table. The idea of dead people's bones being a relic that contains power. Tea leaves, scapulas, the dates of Easter, Ishtar, and Christmas, Saturnalia being exactly the same. Easter being the authentic name for the pagan event itself. Sunday, Lent, in parentheses, it has Lenten, Lencten. That's what Lent is. Valentine's Day, Halloween, Father's Day, Mother's Day, the ring in marriage, rolling eggs on the grass or fields, monks, prayer beads like the Buddhist monks use, also inherited by separate paths of pagan Arabs before they converted to Islam, princes flying on carpets and flying Santas, gurus, popes, fathers, Asherah poles, obelisks, colossus, images of dead men, crosses of candles. It sounds like some wild voodoo, doesn't it? That's exactly what it is. Let's see if we can establish a difference between the relative advantage of having the Santa myth in our lives or spinning a dead chicken by its neck over our heads. You go first. All right. Which of you two which of the two gain, I'm sorry, which of the two gains you the greater advantages? If you're truthful with yourself, they gain you the very same results, nothing, in the here and now, as well as in the eternal perspective. Keep your eye on the Torah, and you will see it is turning out to be a better foundation than any other structure around. I would have to second that myself. Like understanding and knowing Torah, at least up to the day, what I do understand and know, it's been the best thing that I've ever learned in my life. And it helps me to look at things, not just in daily life, just with my physical body and my worship towards Yahuwah alone, but even in business dealings and looking at things according to Yahuwah's law and how it helps you make better decisions all the way around for your family, for your business. Just it's the best thing going ever. Well, keep your eye on the Torah, and you will see it is turning out to be a better foundation than any other structure around. Names, beliefs, customs, and teachings all dissolve as shifting sand on the beach of history, but the Torah stands like a rock. There is nothing evil hiding under the Torah. It simply teaches us how to love. Maggie, who visited the young, who, let's not say Mashiach, right? Because when you come, look, every time I see it, I get what they're saying, but he didn't save anybody from anything. He didn't, right? The most he did, according to what the book teaches, or I can't even really say that now that I think about it. I was about to say he walked in Torah in a way, but he was some of the things he was saying, especially like with the cannibalism, like drinking the blood, taking the juice or wine, acting like it's his blood, drinking it and eating his flesh, like that's directly against what Yahuwah says, right? So you really have to be careful, right? The leaven is abundant, so you have to be careful, right? It says, Maggie, who visited the young Yahusha, came when he was about 2 years old, not the night of his birth. They spoke to Herod first, and he carefully examined them to learn exactly when the star had appeared. The Magi were probably Mandians, sun worshippers, and were watching for this star because they were descendants of the Babylonians who had preserved copies of Daniel's writings and probably other prophets as well. The reason the Magi paid close attention was because Daniel was quite a famous and important figure among the Babylonian wise men, and his interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream had saved the lives of all their ancestors. They were what we would call wizards and may have been keepers of the flame, the sacred fire. Remember that these men were also the primary reason the clergy were as black today. They played with ashes a lot of the time. They were mumblers who interpreted the mysteries. No doubt Nostradamus had a lot in common with them. He gazed into a fire when writing his quatrains. They engaged in magic. This logically led to the medieval attempt to transmutate metals like iron into gold. The gifts the Magi brought were gold, a gift for a king, frankincense, a gift for a priest, and myrrh, a burial ointment used to glue the wrappings of the body. But these costly gifts also provided for the flight and stay in Egypt, since Joseph, Miriam, and we ain't gonna say the Prince of Peace, we're gonna say JC, Mary, Joseph, and their little baby, left that very night, being warned by Gabriel of Herod's design to kill the child. Any child can show you which day is the seventh day of the week on the calendar. How is it that we adults find it so difficult to rest on the proper day? Luke, hold on. Anytime it's about to say something, I need to pre-read the scripture just to make sure. Okay. At Luke 18:17, Yahusha said, whoever does not receive the kingdom of Yahuwah like a child shall not enter it. We all read scripture to find deeper meanings and glean the pure thoughts of the one who inspired it. There are false teachers guiding people away from the truth as well, misleading them into greater darkness. And one of these, the study of Kabbalism, Kabbalism. I probably said that wrong. Kabbalism. Y'all know what I'm saying. The study of Kabbalism, there are 4 levels of meaning. This puffed up teaching is like leavening expands bread. Kabbalah is about yoking with forces, just as a guru teaches his adherents to pursue through yoga. We are warned to be aware of the leavening or inflated teachings of the scribes and Pharisees. These men and others like Kabbalists interpreted Torah on these 4 levels. Peshat, the literal meaning of the words, remez, the simple secondary meaning, drosh, an exotic derivative going out on a limb, straining the meaning severely, and soothe. Let's hope we aren't responsible for this interpretation level. Like, this is completely way out there, that 4th level. Anyway, if we strain to see past what Torah literally says, it might cause us to overlook it. Straining out a gnat, we could swallow a camel as we drink the milk of the Torah, or we could find that as we correct another on a small detail, we have overlooked a huge log in our own ability to see with clarity what Torah says. Yahusha's remark must have sounded insulting to the puffed up rabbis or exalted ones. The Pharisees, Kabbalism, had leavened or puffed up their self-image and added much. Yahusha was clearly saying that a child was superior to them in comprehension. Many traditions in Rabbinic Yehudism and Catholicism originate in Buddhism. Okay, who we at? Are we at 58? I think we'll stop right here because this next section, it goes into Nimrod stuff and Santa Moloch. It's going to start getting some more detail about that. So since we're already at 58 minutes, I think we'll pause right here and we can pick up this so we don't have to cut this off. And it goes into this with some pictures and stuff. So we'll pause right here for today. Beautiful people. Yeah, so this will be good to read on Saturday because this is a nice little long section. Although it's broken up into subsections, I think it'll be good to keep all this together for tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to pause right here, y'all. So we started on page 74 and we paused on page 79. We read 2 Chronicles chapter 30, 31, and 32. Guys, it is Friday, May the 21st, 2021, day 159 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets. And of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 828. That is without the Sabbath days and the feast day Sabbath days added into the count. Why? Because we rest, as Yahuwah has commanded us to. All right. It's just become a habit of saying that. So we just make it part of the day. I feel like I'm missing something when I don't say it. So I just say it all the time, for the most part. Anyway. All right, y'all. Okay, so let's go over here to the blessing, which is found in Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. You remember, the Nazarite vow is the first 21 verses of Numbers chapter 6. And Yahuwah said a man or a woman can take it. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Okay, I don't think we had any questions today. But thank you, Tiffany, for that correction. I said the three feasts where we're commanded to go up. I said unleavened bread, but when you celebrate, I don't know why that didn't click, but thank you. Shavuot is the Feast of Weeks, which they call Pentecost, right? But when you go up for Passover, you're already there for unleavened bread. So it wouldn't be that, because that, although it's two separate feasts, they're already there. So you wouldn't go home and then come back, right? Because the Passover actual event, it only spans throughout the night into the next day. Then Feast of Unleavened Bread began. So thank you for that correction. Shavuot is the Feast of Weeks. All right. So with that being said, y'all, that's it. Won't have anything over here on YouTube. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me today, everybody. I will see y'all back here tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, on the weekends, if the Sabbath doesn't fall on it, we sleep in a little bit longer and we show up at 7:30. All right. So tomorrow morning, y'all, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace. Bye, y'all.